So the first question is that it seemed to those of us that are looking at this from a distance that the whole notion of after school or outside of school suddenly became melded with school and with the broader functioning of the world. And so we were just interested in what the impact has been on your whole traditional world as we've come to learn more about everything about how families function and how kids needs are met in our community over the course of the pandemic.
That's a great question, Steve. I will have to say, our whole field has been transformed. Not that the work that we're doing is necessarily different, but the way we've been doing it and the recognition and understanding of that need and the extent and the amount. When I think back to last March when the pandemic started, at the very beginning, the first 10 days, 2 weeks, we were kind of in this weird space where there was this assumption that, well, if schools were no longer in person, that after school didn't exist. And it was actually the complete flip is what was true, is that actually after school was needed even more and youth serving organizations were needed anymore. And then what they ended up doing was, morphing and shifting in the way that they always have to meet the needs of children, youth, and families, whether that was delivering meals or, creating online gathering spaces or sending enrichment packets home, or as we saw, many of them providing childcare for the children of essential workers, and then summer programming and remote learning hubs, and on and on and on across the course of the year. I think that some of the issues that we have focused on around equity and access and inclusion in programs have always been there, especially when you look at summer, who can participate in programs, who can afford programs. But with the pandemic, it wasn't just some kids or those kids in that area or in that income bracket that couldn't participate. It was all of a sudden a problem for everybody, right? And that really raised the profile. When there wasn't a school space to go to and there weren't, and everyone had been home for 3 months and now we're home in the summer, that need for programs and spaces was just grew exponentially.
And suddenly you were a featured part of the governor's press conference, which tells you something about the rising profile of the whole issue. So as you had to respond to the changing needs and the unbelievable opportunities that have come about, what kinds of data informed your whole approach to what would happen next?
I think the data really drives back constantly to that access point. Where were the children, youth, and families that needed services and supports? Where were the programs that were open or able to be open? We had to deal with a lot of location issues. If a school building was closed and a youth serving organization, an after school program or a summer program was used to using that building or had in the past, and all of a sudden couldn't use that building. So we were looking at data on other available spaces and really trying to match that need and supply and demand in a way across our state, and then always looking at affordability and accessibility and any data we could get on that. I also saw this year as a state growth around looking at not only children, youth, and families, low income or moderate income children, youth, and families having access to program, but also populations such as youth with special needs or disabilities, or who identify as BIPOC or LGBTQ, and really paying attention to those populations as well, and how we're serving them and what access exists. We've been doing a lot of mapping of programs, and we've been doing a lot of surveying of programs and families to really try to help close those gaps. I think the other data and information that we have really been seeking and trying to create space for throughout the pandemic is that of youth voice, and what youth themselves are saying they want and need. And often that has not been maybe the, like a survey necessarily, but actually having a conversation and giving a space where they can speak to what they need. And that has been one of the most important things that I think we've been able to help do.
I'm assuming that it is sensed from a distance that there are new connections for you all in the broader world, and I'm interested in what has your experience been in terms of new partners in this broader endeavor?
It has been so exciting to see the partnerships grow on so many different levels. I mean, Steve, as I said at the beginning, when this first started, we were kind of in the spot of, well, of our state agencies even not knowing, well, where does after school fit, right? Is it with Agency of Human Services? Is it with Agency of Commerce and Community Development? Is it with the Agency of Education, right? You know that well. And, trying to figure out, well, who was paying attention. So we started there, and now here we are a little over a year later, and we have a multi-agency, multi-sector partnership group that is meeting every week, that is intensely focused on how we ensure summer programming. That's where we're focused right now, and doing it together. And I saw the same thing with the school age childcare hubs in the fall when we set those up for remote learning days. It was a level of partnership and collaboration that I had not seen or experienced, across state agency and coming together and figuring out what do we need to do and what are the barriers and how do we address them. And throughout all of it, it's about moving quickly, right? Because the story of the pandemic is you're always trying to do something that you wish you had been able to start 3 months earlier, or 6 months earlier, or whatever. And it's never been done before. So you're together figuring out new things. So I think we have, I hope, what will remain to be systemic partnerships across these sectors and agencies. I also feel that I've been given the gift of many personal and professional new colleagues and deeper partnerships there where because of the demand, we're texting, we're calling, we're in conversation regularly, we're problem solving together, and that relationship building, I hope, is going to continue to strengthen our state, right? I mean, that's what our state is about, right? That's how you solve things, is people coming together. And this has forced us and allowed us in a different way to work in ways that we maybe didn't normally do, where I'm able to call someone at the governor's office, or I'm able to call someone at one of the agencies and immediately, get into those conversations and try to problem solve something. And it's been a huge benefit for what we've been trying to do and work on together, as well as the children, youth, and families that are benefiting from the programs.
So maybe as a closing question, what has been your biggest challenge as a leader in this field in responding to the needs and the opportunities over the last 15 months?
I think the pace has been hard. The working through uncertainty, working with our field is so varied and dedicated and committed to the children and youth, but one after school program or one youth serving organization to the next, they don't look the same, and how they operate and how they're funded and where they sit in the community and what services they provide varies a lot from space to space. And it brings such strength to the field, because often they're fitting into that segment or piece of the community where they're most needed. But I think it's hard for those outside, to say, well, what is, even when I say the field, I have gotten questions of like, well, what do you mean the field, right? And I'm like, it is this tremendous body of youth development professionals that are on this, but it's harder to talk about than to say, well, they're a teacher or they're a social worker, because we don't yet recognize the field in the same way. So that has been a challenge. And they are tired. I mean, they have been the ones, like I said, who stepped up, for the essential childcare, who ran the first and only, the programs in the summer when no one else was running anything, who on remote learning day stepped up again and are now for this summer, along in partnership with schools this year. But
What are you most proud of as you complete this, what historically was considered to be a school year, but as you approach this coming summer, what are you most proud of that is grown out of this incredible learning experience?
I'm proud of the relationships that we have built across the state and this field. You know, when the pandemic started, we had daily calls, statewide calls and forums. And we're talking with and working with programs that normally we would see 4 times a year. All of a sudden we were, we're seeing them daily or weekly. I am most proud of how those programs and staff and directors have responded to every challenge with a problem-solving mindset. Not a complaining, not a woe is me. Let's be in this together. Let's be in this conversation. And I see them doing it again right now. The level of response around this challenge of how do we expand access to summer programming has been tremendous. And the ideas that have come forward, how to increase inclusion and diversity and supports are so exciting and so reaffirming to read. And that's what I'm most proud of, is really the field and how they've stepped up.
And what are when you think of the results of all of this that have gone on, how do you summarize the results? What is different about Vermont after school than existed 15 months ago?
Sometimes I feel like, pottery that's gone through the kiln. In a way, there's a reaffirmation of who we are and why we are here and our role in the state and how important it is. There's the recognition from the outside about the need for after school, summer, and youth serving organizations, but there's also the internal of yes, we are standing up, we are here, we are needed. I think that's a big piece of it. I'm sorry, Steve, can you say your question again? And let them cut the part out.
I didn't know if when you think about sort of the results of all these
the results
flavors, I'm assuming that there are more children being served. I'm assuming that you've described the change in the whole environment, that a whole lot more people know all about the situation and are supportive and are working as partners. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that have happened, but I didn't know if there was sort of a way to react to just the general question of the impact or the end result of all these efforts over the last 15 months.
The end result is there will be more children and youth accessing programs this summer. There have been and will continue to be growing close collaborations in communities. I mean, entire communities coming together around their young people and what can we do to support them. I don't think that's going to go away. So I think there's the quantifiable results about hours or numbers or slots or children served. And then there's also the collaboration and partnership. And then the last piece that I said about the identity and the recognition of the role. Like those would be the 3 pieces. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Holly, thanks so much for this and for your personal contributions to this incredible endeavor of bringing all these people together in a very complex environment.
Absolutely.